All right, looks like everybody's jumping in here, so I'm going to get started. Welcome to StriveScan College Launchpad. We're so excited to have you participating in this event. We have some fantastic panelists here with us today. Panel will last approximately 45 minutes. My name is Chelsea and I will be your facilitator. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to the presenters at any time. This is one of many sessions happening, so be sure to check the schedule on the website. This presentation is being recorded and will be available at strivescan.com/launch. And without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our presenters, and Karin is going to start us off.
Good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world right now. Where we are happens to be early evening. My name is Karin Smith. I am the Midwest Regional Admission Manager at Beloit College in Beloit, Wisconsin. And my other presenters are going to introduce themselves.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Tej Mitchell. I'm currently the Interim Assistant Vice President for Admission at DePaul University in Greencastle, Indiana.
And my name is Galen Rose. I'm the Director of Recruitment at Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Okay, so what are we going to talk with you about today? Well, we're going to try to cover three general topics: the role college essays play in the application process, how to write a compelling college essay, and number three, how to round out your application with awesome supplemental essays. Okay. But first, let's start with why this seems like such a daunting task, right? So why is this a big thing? And Tej and Galen and I have done this presentation a number of times, and it seems that it is always a lot of individuals who are present and concerned about this. And I'll tell you why. I think there's really one reason, because we're asking you to talk about yourself, right? So there's no subject line other than yourself. And we ask you to do it in 650 words or less if you're using the Common Application. So like, wait, what? I'm supposed to talk about myself in 650 words? Many of you may be thinking that you're here because we're going to give you the secret sauce as to how to do this, right? Like we're going to tell you, okay, here's the insider secret. The problem is that the secret sauce is you. And Tej and Galen and I are not you. So we can't really give you that secret sauce. There will be essay prompts that will be offered to help guide you through the process. But at the end, the prompt is you. And honestly, in this culture that we live in, talking about ourselves isn't something that we do very often. And as a matter of fact, in some circles, we're discouraged from doing that. And then all of a sudden, this huge process in your life shows up and we are asking you to do something that A, you probably haven't practiced, and B, doesn't feel comfortable, and C is like, okay, well, so what's so cool about me? We would tell you that most all of you are kind of cool. So what we hope is to help you to start to think about this as an opportunity, like kind of a cool, big opportunity versus a daunting task. Next slide, thank you. Okay, so in general, what are we looking for, right? We're looking for a strong product and a voice, right? Does it flow? Does it tell us a story? Is the writing grammatically correct within whatever creative element you choose to use? Is the writer, you, able to think analytically, so you're responding to the prompt, and reflectively? Does your essay give us a hint at what you might contribute to our culture, to our community, right? Who are you as an individual? And it's also important to note at this point that the amount of emphasis placed on your essay depends on each individual school. So there are some schools that will tell you, yeah, we don't look at it that much. There are some schools that will say it's a very important piece of your application to us. And so that's a little bit of the homework that you have to do. But if you don't take the time to dig in and figure out what's important to you, what you care about, you will look like any of these individuals in this picture right here, right? Nothing special. The other thing I'll tell about your essay, and this comes back to the opportunity piece. When you start to complete your college applications, you will discover pretty quickly that your essay is the single piece in any application that you have complete control over in the moment. Everything else is something that's been cumulative. Your activities, what have you done over time? Your grade point average, what does it look like over time? Your recommenders, how have they gotten to know you and what are they going to say about you? But your essay is this great opportunity to tell us about you as an individual. Okay. Most importantly, your essay is how we get to know you. Otherwise, you're going to look like that photo that we just showed you. It's okay, quickly, to let your personality come out in your essay too, right? So if you're a funny person, it's okay to be funny. If you're not a funny person, don't try to be funny now, because it doesn't come across really well. We also are going to know if you've done it or someone else has done it. Believe it or not, we'll know. And so this is not something that you want to turn over to a parent, to a good friend, to a college counselor. This needs to come from you, and it is a great opportunity. So we're giving you some example prompts here, some things that you may see depending on where you're submitting an application. The first three come directly from the Common Application. And I should probably step aside here for a second, because we all assume you know what the Common Application is. Well, the Common Application is Common Application. When you're finished with us, if you have not done this already, you can go online and you can, put in a Google search, Common Application, and you will learn that there is an application that exists in our world that is accepted by almost 1,000 colleges and universities in the country. So it's an efficient way to apply to 2 or 3 or 4, or 10, that's too many, colleges. And so what we're giving you in the first 3 prompts here are essay prompts that come off the Common Application, because we know a number of you may indeed be using the Common Application. Number 4 comes from the University of Wisconsin. And since Galen and I both work for schools in Wisconsin, and Tej did at one time, we chose to select the University of Wisconsin essay prompt. And you can see that it's different, right? Now, the Common Application also gives you a wide, you can pick to speak about something based on a prompt, or there's usually a final question that's like, just tell us what you want to tell us. And so you're not hemmed in necessarily by the prompts, but if you're going to choose to speak to a prompt, then speak to the prompt. There's lots of room for freedom in all of these because they're general prompts, right? So they're giving you an opportunity to think about something that you care about, something you've done, something you hope to do, something that's important to you, and tell us about that. Okay, Tej, you're up.
Yes. Just to refresh, my name is Tej Mattil. I'm currently at DePaul University in Indiana. And I am excited. I get to give you some do's and don'ts, some good tips and tricks, both to writing the essay and going through the brainstorming process to figure out what you want to write about. Advice I always give students as they're kind of rising out of their junior year is to put some effort into this over the summer. If you can go into the start of your senior year with your essay written, you will have a much better homecoming. I promise you that. And one of the things we always are encouraging students to do when thinking about what you're going to write your essay on is to do what you can to try and stand out in your essay. I worry sometimes that when we say try to stand out, students go directly to the idea that they have to have the most absolutely the best essay that was ever written in order to be admitted, which of course isn't true. Harvard admits almost 2,000 students a year. here in Wisconsin, UW-Madison admits over 10,000 students a year, right? So there's not 10,000 best essays ever written. There's just 10,000 unique and individual stories that were written in their own way. So you want to set yourself apart, but there is no magic essay. You might hear from a friend who did it in a haiku 3 years ago and it worked for them. That's great for them. You may also hear from a friend, Karen referenced it. They may be a very funny person and they wrote a very funny essay. Don't try at that if you're not naturally funny. It will be an awkward moment. If you're not sarcastic, don't write a sarcastic essay. But for me, a very sarcastic person, if you are sarcastic, I would love to read your essay, maybe just to proofread it. But there's no magic solution, but there's just uncommon, unique, different ways to tell uncommon, unique, different stories. And your story is unique and it is different, even if it doesn't feel like it at times. And what you want to think about is how to write something that is going to both reflect your life experience or a portion of your life experience and demonstrate who you are as on your way into college. At the end, the essay that you write should not be able to accidentally fall into someone else's admissions application. If you've done that, you've succeeded. As we move to the next slide, there's some helpful tips here on how to get started. You see we have a tiny URL. This will be up long enough for you to write it down. And I did verify just moments ago that it is still an active tiny URL. But there's some brainstorming exercises you can do there. And they'll walk you through it. There's a YouTube video there also from the College Essay Guide. But you'll want to eventually decide on a structure and then just start writing. And that third line there is often the hardest part. You can get so wrapped up in thinking about it, but really just put a pen to paper, or more likely just start typing and just start getting something out. Some example activities that we picked up. Nope, we're still back at the help slide. But some example activities would be, think about if you could put, say 20 items or whatever number you would pick in like a time capsule that you're going to bury in your backyard that would just describe the essence of who you are. What would those 20 items be? And you can imagine an enormous box, right? So if it's a camel and that's what you would want, like you could, fit it in the box. You could also think like, what are the 10 values that you connect with the most, right? So kind of identify those. And then from the 10, pick your top 5, then your top 3, and see if maybe there's a theme there that could be a good essay. Or make a list of, say, 17 details of your life, just interesting facts that describe small, random parts of who you are or your journey to this point in your life. And then again, look for themes. Is there anything that keeps coming up again and again? Because that may be a good essay topic, kind of hiding in plain sight for you. We also want you to think about structure, right? Like, is it going to be narrative? Is it going to be a montage, a series of kind of vignettes? Is it going to be a creative writing project? Is it going to be poetry, etc.? I've seen essays come through in all of that. I've seen some come through as stage writing as well, or screenwriting. It really, there's not a secret structure that's the best, but the structure has to serve well the story that you're telling. Now, some of the do's and don'ts. The do's, the thumbs up, to consider content and form. And again, I'd just like to stress, those two should feed into each other, right? The content should match the form, etc. Also, it's best to think about telling us something we haven't learned about you yet. We'll have your high school transcript. We will have, if you are applying through the Common App, we'll have the list of activities that you entered there. So we don't need you to kind of reiterate that. It doesn't mean you can't talk about the things that you've done. We just don't need a narrative listing. You can connect your essay to your values. That's one way to make sure that the essay that you wrote couldn't apply to someone else's application. I would encourage you to be specific and to use the active voice. And this, the second to last one, is a key component. when you're writing your first draft, write it long. It's much easier to cut back and refine than to think, oh, I need to add 2 more paragraphs and try and find ways to work them in. That often has it reading disjointed. And then finally, proofread it, share it, proofread it again, share it again, proofread it again, share it again. You don't want to like run it through a rock tumbler so it looks completely different than when you started, but you do want to be sure things, their typos are dealt with, grammar issues are clear, etc. And then finally, do think outside the box, right? Think about what is the text on the page, the format of the text that is going to best represent you, again, outside of the transcript, outside of the activities resume, the Common App.
Can you talk a little louder? Individuals in the chat are asking for that.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Is this better? Can you hear me well, Karin? Good, okay. Thank you for requesting that addition. So these are the list of the do's. We do have some suggestions of things to avoid. One thing that we recommend avoiding, you should not need to buy a bunch of best college essay books. Again, if for no other reason than, as Karin said at the beginning, the authors are not you, so they cannot tell you what is the best essay for you. Do not let anyone write or over edit your essay. Don't restate the essay prompt. Colleges are reading many essays kind of back to back. So we're familiar with the prompts, just get right into it. Do not rely solely on spell check. Don't ignore spell check, but don't rely solely on spell check. Do not use a thesaurus on every single word. Don't write a school essay, right? Like, do treat this differently than you would an English paper that you're turning in your second quarter. And don't skip it, and don't gloss over it. Put some time into this part of your college application. Again, I recommend doing it over the summer. Maybe it will bring down your July a little bit, but it will, like I said, it will improve your September and October thoroughly. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Galen Rose with Lawrence University. Now that we've kind of talked through the big college essay, right? The big 650 words most people focus on and panic about. Everyone feels like, okay, I'm off the hook now. And instead you realize you get into each college's application and you realize they have extra supplement essays that they want. Now, sometimes these are typically quite short, but the length can vary. It could be 250 words, it could be 100 words, it could be 47 words as we have here. But what I love about supplemental essays is that they're often a time to let the quirkiest parts of you really shine. In addition to drawing out who you are and the school getting to know more personally and more specifically about you, I also think supplemental essays are an amazing opportunity for you to get to know about the school and what that school values specifically. The common application themes, they're used, right, by, as Karin said, about 1,000 schools. So they tend to be quite general. And sometimes the supplemental essays can be as well. Why this school is usually the biggest one. Why this extracurricular? But sometimes, as you'll see in that very last example, they are really, really specific. That one is actually from the University of Chicago. It is one of my favorites. They provide this graphic that goes along with it in their application as well. But it really, I think, can speak to the ethos of the school. Whether it's a place where you're going to find other quirky students, perhaps they're asking about diversity and inclusion because that's a value that they really hold. Maybe they're asking what you can bring to their campus community because you know they're a residential school where students are living the whole time. As much as we are excited to get to learn about you, I think supplemental essays are one of the best ways through an application that you can get to know about what's important to the school. I also think that means you should be specific when you're answering these questions. You'll have to do a little bit more research. In your big college essay, you know you, so there's probably a limited amount of research you're having to go into. But if you're specifically trying to say why this school in a wide sea of thousands of other schools that you could choose from, is it a specific class, a specific program, something that you felt on that campus tour? It really should be unique and special and specific in your answer. We also don't need you to repeat anything that we have written on the website, because Karin and Tej and I wrote the website. So if you regurgitate something else exactly to us, in all likelihood, we have put parts of that together. So take some time. It's great to do your research and pull that information. And we'll talk about even where to do that in a minute, but spend some time putting it in your own words and in your own form. Exactly as Tej was saying, consider that content and form. Often these essays are a space where you have a little bit more creativity and a little bit more liberty to find your space and find your voice. And really try and call out something different. So some of the common mistakes we see would be like, you named the wrong school because you did a bunch of these for the same, for different schools and copied and pasted them. Things that aren't particularly special or unique to that place. Like, you may like a school because it's in a large city. That's great. That is wonderful. But there's a lot of schools in large cities, right? It's not specific. It's not different enough. I'm thinking specifically ones that call out, I saw an individual on campus that held a door open for me, even though I was 46 steps behind, and they still stuck with it. And I'm just impressed by how nice your students are. And I want to be, part of that type of community. Things that are so unique that we can remember them years and years later in terms of who you are and what you'll bring to campus. And then thinking about where to get those answers. I think especially with those supplemental essays, going beyond the website is a really, really great exercise, not just to answer the supplement, but also to get to know the school better in a more authentic way. Social media, easily, I think, the most authentic way that you will see students' voices, especially if, of course, you move beyond, right, the Twitter and the TikTok. Like Instagram, probably somewhere in the middle. But if you start getting on those Snapchats, TikToks, things like that, it's going to be more authentic student voices. If you go to a college's YouTube and you find those student interviews or professor profiles, if you look at tours of their dorms that are led by some student on their iPhone in a pandemic when no one was allowed in the dorm, those are the most raw, authentic views of what it would be like to be on a college campus. And I think that is the best material that you can often find. A class syllabi is another one that's quite specific, right? You're not just naming, I would love to take this course with this person. Awesome, because we know you've looked that up and you've taken the time to do your research. But what about that class? What are they reading? What are they doing? I can't wait to do the marine program in the Caribbean because I've always wanted to see a tigerfish and I live in landlocked Wisconsin, right? We want to know those really specific things. Reading reviews can be a little bit of a mixed bag. There's some sources that are better than others out there, but often it can be a great help to get a general view of what is important to students and what maybe is lacking a little bit and what you might be able to contribute in that type of environment or community. And finally, touring the school. And I say this primarily because you get to hear a student's voice. Most all tour guides are going to be students. And so you get their perspective in particular. You can ask them questions. A lot of schools, of course, will have a virtual tour up as well now, and you'll still get that student voice, but some are even doing personalized virtual tours where a student will walk you around campus on an iPad or show you a slideshow of all of that while answering your individual questions. Getting to know those unique spaces, picturing where are you going to study one day? What organizations are you excited to get involved in? what types of traditions are going to be a big part of your experience are all wonderful topics to cover in a supplemental essay. And from here, we really just want to take the time to answer your questions. As Karin and Teacher both mentioned, the college essay often feels scary to people. And conversely, it's admissions officers' favorite part of an application. I don't think I know a single other admissions counselor who doesn't have the essay as their favorite portion. Not because it has to be beautifully written, not because you need to be the next great American novelist, but because we love to know you as a person. So feel free to head to the Q&A. Those questions will come into panelists and we will help kind of direct them around. If you have individual questions, you're also welcome to reach out to any of us anytime. We have our emails listed there and we'd love to hear your questions as well.
I'm going to jump in here for a minute because I happen to notice that a number of the participants listening to us tonight are parents. A bunch of you are parents, which is both lovely and not. Lovely because it shows that you are supporting your student in this process. Not lovely because there is this temptation to now be the expert in the room about the college essay. And Tej and Galen both know that I am a storyteller, and so I'm going to tell you a story. I'm the only one on the panel who's had children actually go through this process, so I win. I've had 3 go through the process. My middle child is a boy, and I love him dearly. He also gave me more gray hair than any child ever should give a mom, just because he is very different than I am. I am a planner. I am a doer. I am a get it done early and then redo it and redo it and redo it. Patrick is not. And so his senior year, he was an athlete, a fall sport athlete. We had visited some colleges. He had seen his older sister go through this process. He knew that this is what his mother does and has done it for a long time. We had talked about essays, essays. And he had not done his, and he had not done it, and he had not done it, and he had not done it. And I was ready to just absolutely A, kill him, or B, throw myself off a bridge. And so I had to do this very, very difficult parent thing and just walk away. Because I thought to myself, well, we've told him that if he doesn't go to college in the fall, he will be living at home, paying rent and paying to use the car. I thought that was threat enough. We had told him, he was well aware of the deadlines, and deadlines are deadlines. And so I will tell you that he submitted his essay that I never saw ahead of time, ever, exactly 5 minutes before the deadline. And after I had spent all day running errands and doing errands for the next door neighbor and gardening some more and running some more errands, I came home and he said, well, they're done. I sent my applications. And I said, wait, what? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, did you have anybody double check your essay? No. And the terrible first thing that went through my head was, okay, there has to be a way to unsubmit essays, and certainly unsubmit applications. Like how can a student unsubmit? How can a student unsubmit an application? There has to be a way to do this. And then he said to me, you can look at it if you want. Like, do you want to see my essay? And I was like, yeah. So he shared the essay. And I learned 2 things about my son. Number one, I did the right thing in walking away because his essay was actually lovely. The other thing I was reminded of is he's not a planner. He's not a get it done way early. What's best for him is being under the gun, knowing that it has to get done. And as difficult as that is for me, that's how he operates. And so I think I would tell you, the parents in the room, trust your kid, be supportive, but don't be over supportive. talk through, sure, like what are some ideas? What are you thinking about? Do you remember the time, right? Then they're going to roll their eyes and say, oh, really, Mom? But I think you can supply a supportive role. Please don't over edit the essay, do the essay for them, turn it over to some expert. They'll do it. And in all likelihood, they'll surprise you.
Thank you, Karen. I really appreciate you sharing that. We have a number of kind of different questions here. A really good one, I think, to start. Topics you shouldn't write about. Are there any topics you shouldn't write about? Things we hear often, right? The mission trip essay, the sports essay, the insert word here essay. Tej, would you like to comment on that one?
Sure. I think there's two components to the question. One is there anything that will negatively impact the student if they write about? Let me come back to that. The other one is, are there essays that college admissions, the other half of that question that I hear is, are there essays that college admissions reps are tired of hearing? If that makes sense. There are certainly some kind of well-traveled territories in college essays, but I would say if it's genuine to your student, to you as a student, that's what you should write about, right? Put your spin on it, make sure it isn't something that could apply to someone else in your school, or even, to be frank, even another sibling. If you had a sibling that was applying 2 years later, your essay shouldn't be able to fit in their college application either. So I wouldn't try and game it out as far as, will they have read an article about, or not an article, will they have read an essay about my mission trip or my basketball game or something like that. If that's what was meaningful to you, write about it, because that will come through. The first half of that, though, are there things that can cause you trouble if you write about it? Versions of this question that I've heard are, if I'm on an IEP or have a learning disability, will it hurt me to write that about my essay? And the short answer to that is no, it sure shouldn't, but I understand the question and the concern. What I've always said to students and families is, in issues where whether it's academic or physical or other accommodations that would need to be made for the student, the sooner you can tell us about that, the sooner we're going to be able to help you understand what the resources are at the college. So if you can put it in the essay, that's great. Then we'll know right from the start to follow up with you about those things. If you're nervous about that and you want to wait until later in the process, I would say then talk to us about that, whatever you had a concern about, after you have the admission letter in your hand, and then you can contact us. We're not going to unadmit you because you're on an IEP. So there's that. So that's the answer to my answer to that. The final piece of it, are there things you could write about that could cause challenges for you? Issues of abuse or other potentially really challenging things that clearly would be impacting the student. I have seen instances, very few, where that we have had to wrestle with, do we need to follow up or report this or something along those ways? Very rarely. That would be a really high bar, but it's not unheard of.
Thank you. Another question I see here, wasn't aware essays have word limits, tools that can be used to count the number of words. And I think if we can expand that question too to what if your essay is too short or too long, and how to handle that. Karen, do you maybe want to touch that one?
You're going to want to do it in Word first, right? So that you can erase and cross out and print it out. Well, I shouldn't say print it out, because that dates me right there. My children give me the stink eye when I say that. And that provides a word count tool, right? So you can do that. And then you copy and paste when you have the final version and you put it into the essay. So what was the question? Oh, too long or too short? Okay. Too long, you edit. Too long is better than too short. Too short, I would suggest it's maybe not a meaty enough topic. You're trying to paint a picture, right? And you've probably had high school teachers tell you that. Which means you use adjectives and you describe places and you describe yourself. And I've had students, well, Galen and Tej know my all-time favorite essay was a million years ago when I was first working in admissions. And there was a student who was applying to my school that I had met, and I knew he was a little bit of a marginal student in regards to his high school performance. Not terrible, but he kind of had a slow start. And so I had talked with him about the importance of the essay. And so his application came in, and this is back in the day when it was actually on paper. I know I'm very old. And I opened it up and I went right to the essay, which is something that I do. When I review a student's application, I look at the essay first before I know anything else about the student. Because what it does is it allows the student's words to set the table for how I'm going to look at everything else. So I go to the student's essay, and it is literally 2 pages of words. There is no capitalization. There's no punctuation. I was stunned, flabbergasted. I was like, oh my gosh. Well, I know how this is going to go. I actually left my office. I walked away. I was like, okay. I come back. The very first line says, I'm going to describe 10 minutes of time before my team, this student was a very gifted basketball player, took the floor to play in the state title game, what I was thinking. And I don't think in capitalization and punctuation. And I was like, oh, okay. That right there made me want to keep reading the essay, right? And it was clever. It was hard to follow at certain points, but it was clever. And he delivered beautifully things about himself as an individual, things about basketball, things about his family. He wove time into the essay. 8 minutes to go, 6 minutes to go, 4 minutes to go. So at the end, you're like, oh, so I think, was that hard for him to write? No, it wasn't. Did he have to think about it and probably edit it down? Of course he did. He hit it out of the park. And so I think when you find the topic, and he painted a picture, I had a sense for the people in the stands. I had a sense for the lights in the arena. Paint us a picture about yourself in whatever way is comfortable for you.
One of the questions I think we also hear quite often is, can I get help on my college essay? Like, if I'm not a writer, like, what's the appropriate avenue of help? And I think I was a student who was really, really worried about, I thought I had to do it all myself. I didn't actually have a college counselor in my high school. And I really just assumed I had to do everything myself and no one else could read it, because that was cheating, right? It felt like it was cheating. And that is actually not true. I think having a trusted friend, counselor, teacher, parent, whoever it is, take a second read of your essay can be incredibly helpful. And of course, in that case, it absolutely perfectly worked out, that there was no puncture and grammar, and that was the style and the choice there. But it certainly reminds me of other students and opportunities I've seen where you could use that extra read through, as long as you're comfortable with anyone else kind of seeing that topic. One other question that's come through is personal statement the same thing as the college essay? Yes. But a good follow-up question to that as well is, how personal is too personal? Is there kind of a line in that essay? And Tej, I think you were touching on a little bit of that earlier. Do you want to take that one as well?
Sure. Yeah. You can be confident that this essay won't be shared with people on campus generally. So, you know, I can imagine any number of personal experiences that a student would want to write about, but they wouldn't want that to define them before they get to campus. But it's a very important part of their high school experience and journey to college. You can be confident that that will stay relatively secure with the admissions office. It won't be fully secure, right? We don't lock them down behind paywalls or whatever. So it's something that it would be possible, you know, admissions counselors 3 years out might look back at previous essays for some reason. I can't imagine what those reasons would be, but it's not impossible. So, you know, I would say it's confidential, but it's not lock solid secure, if that makes sense. But under no circumstance do you have to worry that other students or other faculty are going to kind of think of this essay as you're arriving on campus.
All right. I think we have answered the questions here, unless anyone wants to add a last one to the Q&A. Karen or Teej, any last thoughts?
I would tell you that any of the three of us here would be happy to review your essay for you, even if you're not applying to our schools. I make this offer all the time. Some students take me up on it, some don't. You have to be ready for my response, right? I'm typically, students who are asking me to review their essays are pretty good writers to begin with, but not all. And so this is what we do all day, every day. And as Galen said earlier, none of us, we love essays. And so I would say enjoy this process. The final thing I wanted to say, Galen, is I suspect that this year we may, as we did this last year, see a good number of essays talking about the experience that students and families had during the pandemic. Last year, there was a whole separate section on the Common Application that allowed students to use that section to address pandemic things. You shouldn't feel that you have to use that part of the Common Application, but you also shouldn't feel that you have to talk about the pandemic in your main essay if you choose not to do that. This impacted all of us. And I think for those of you that are rising seniors and parents, this was dramatic. None of us would tell you it wasn't. It was. We hope it's mostly behind us, but we don't know for a fact that it is. And we probably won't know that for a long time. So what I would tell you is, if you want to tell us about that, tell us about that. We've heard a lot and we've learned a lot. And some students were a mess trying to study at home on a Zoom screen like this. Some students thrived in that situation. Some high schools handled it well, some not so well. And so that is an okay topic for you to talk with us about if it tells us about you.
Teej, any last words of wisdom?
I think the parting advice I would leave is make sure your essay could not land in someone else's application, and then you've done it well.
Awesome. And my final thoughts that I always try to leave students with is you do not owe us your story, but it is an absolute privilege to read it. So whatever it is that you are willing to share and what is most important to you is what is most important to us. And we just really appreciate you being willing to share who you are with us and letting us be a little tiny part of your college search and your journey. So thank you all so much for being here. Like I said, please feel welcome to be in touch anytime. We will turn it back over to Chelsea, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was all really great information. I am going to wrap things up here for us. So thank you again to our presenters for putting that together and spending this time with us, and to our participants for jumping in. When you close this window, there will be a link to a very quick 5-question survey. We appreciate any feedback you can provide. We encourage you to check back to the schedule and sign up for more sessions throughout this week. You'll be able to find this session's recording as well as all the other recordings at strivescan.com/launch. And that is going to wrap things up for us tonight. So thanks again for being here. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.